In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Welcome to St. Paul Servant Preparation Course. Today, Lecture 5 about the Coptic Church history. We're going to learn about the Coptic Church in the 4th century, the most famous Pope, Arius heresy and refutation, and the most famous monastic father. So let's get started. Church History, Part 5. This lecture, we're going to talk about St. Athanasius, how he defeated Arius, and the Coptic Church in the 4th century. Our objective that we'll cover in this lecture is to study the most prominent Coptic popes in this time, to acknowledge and refute Arius heresy, and to learn about some of the early famous monks. First, we're going to start by Pope Peter I. He was Pope number 17, and he was enthroned from 302 till 311 AD. And he was a very righteous man before his ordination as a Pope. And there is an interesting story about him when he was a deacon. At one time, while he's praying in the church, someone who was demon-possessed and idol worship at the same time, he came to the church, started attacking the church, throwing rock at the church. So the deacon, Peter, came out to him, prayed over him. He cast out the demon, and the man went away in peace. That gives the people an idea how righteous this deacon is. When he became a pope, there is a famous story, I'm sure most of us know it by now, about baptism by blood. And the story was about a woman who came from Antioch in Syria with her 2 kids to Egypt to baptize them in the Church of Alexandria. And during the ride in the boat, the tides were high and she feared for the safety of her kids. So she cut herself, took some of her blood and started to anoint her own kids in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Then the ship made it safely to the Alexandria. When she came to the Pope, she delivered him the kids to baptize them. And every time he tried to put the kids in the basin, the water froze. Right away, he realized something strange about it, and he questioned her about the story, and she told him what happened on the ship and how she feared for her kids and how she anointed the kids with her own blood. So he told her that means God really accepted her baptism, and this baptism by blood is considered acceptable by Christ. Pope Peter is called the Seal of Martyrs. He actually held 2 councils and excommunicated 2 important heretics. One is Mellitus and the other one is Arius. And he suffered persecution and died as a martyr. He had a famous dream that he told him to his disciple. The dream that he saw Jesus one time wearing a garment, but the garment unfortunately was torn in the middle into 2 halves. So he asked Christ, what happened to you? And Christ said, Arius did that to me, so don't accept him in your church. And Pope Peter gathered his disciple, told him the dream, and told him what happened with Christ, and he told them never accept Arius in the church again. During the Roman persecution, he prayed to God that he will be the last martyr, and God responded to his request. This is the dream that he had. He saw Jesus with his clothes ripped into 2, and he told him, who did that to you? He said, Arius. He said, from now on, don't accept Arius in your church. Now, Pope Peter, because he was a very righteous man, he desired to be the last martyr. He prayed to God, and God responded to him. And the story that he was arrested by the Roman garrison and locked in the prison. All the Christians in the city gathered around the prison, tried to destroy it to free the Pope. But because he desired to be the martyr, he made a deal with the officer to dig a hole in the back wall of the prison and get him out and take him to a far area where nobody watch him and try to kill him at this time in peace. So that's what happened, and they dug the hole, get him out by night. No one of the followers were around him. The soldier actually were afraid to chop his neck because they felt he is a righteous man. So the Roman garrison officer offered them a bunch of money. So one of them extended his sword and killed St. Peter. And it was accepted that he will be the last martyr in his time. That's why the church always call him Pope Peter I, the seal of martyr. Pope number 18 is Pope Archelaus or Achilles, and he was one of Saint Peter's disciple. Unfortunately, Arius, as a slick person as he was, he sometimes pretended that he repent and denounced his heresy, and he fooled Pope Achilles. So Pope Archelaus accepted Arius in the church as a priest and restored him to the church one more time, completely disobeying the command that Pope Peter gave him. And it was told in the history that he only lasted for 6 months. And this papacy was the shortest one among all the popes. And a lot of the scholar of the church and the critics saying that was God's punishment to him because he disobeyed his father Peter and accepted Arius in the church. So he only lasted for 6 months as a pope on the see of Saint Mark. Pope number 18, a great pope, Pope Alexander. He was a second disciple of Pope Peter I. He right away excommunicated Arius, as Pope Peter told him, and he requested from the Roman Empire not only to excommunicate Arius, but they held a very big council, a universal council, that gathered all the bishops from all over the world. His main goal is to contain Arius' heresy before it spread to the world and try to denounce it and kill it at its origin. So he led the Nicene Council, the first council at 325. There were 318 bishops gathered at this council, and he went there with his famous disciple Athanasios, who was later on become the Pope number 20. Among his achievements, that he replaced the Saturn festival with the feast of Archangel Michael, because the people in Alexandria used to celebrate a lot of feasts for the star and worship stars. So Pope Alexander told them, actually, if you really look for something heavily, Archangel Michael is a great figure that we can also honor him. So he replaced the Saturn festival with the feast of Archangel Michael. And still today we celebrate that feast thanks to Pope Alexander, Pope number 19. Next is a great Pope, Pope Athanasius or Athanasios. He's Pope number 20. And he was Pope from 328 till 373. The life story of Pope Athanasius: he was born to a Christian family, baptized as a young boy, and chosen to be a deacon by Pope Alexander. He was a very good disciple of Saint Anthony and wrote actually his biography. So at early age, he went to Saint Anthony to be one of his disciples, and he spent with him a few years, learned about the monastic life and how to live in ascetic life, which helped him very good later on as a pope, and how he stood firm against Arius and his heresy. When he was excommunicated one time and being sent out to France, he wrote the biography of Saint Anthony, and that's how we get to know all the details about Saint Anthony from the book that Saint Athanasius wrote about him. Among his achievements, he established the first church in Ethiopia. He fought Arius' heresy in Nicaea and helped form the creed with Pope Alexander. He was forced to leave Alexandria 5 times by the order of the emperor. Unfortunately, Arius was very connected to the emperor's sister, and through this connection, he get to the emperor Constantine, and through this, he ordered Pope Athanasius to leave his seat in Alexandria 5 times. So he fled to different countries, to Italy, to Turkey, to France, to the Egyptian desert, and to monastery in Egypt. Saint actually supported him a couple of times, came to Alexandria to defend Pope Athanasius and his faith, and that helped Athanasius to overcome Arius and his heresy. Okay, so the war between Arius followers and Athanasius was actually a very vicious war. So it turned actually into a very aggressive turn. The follower of Arius accused Pope Athanasius by so many accusations. At least I'm going to put 4 of them here. They accuse him to prohibit the wheat exportation to Rome, which means they're going to get him in trouble with the emperor in Rome. They accuse him one time by destroying a church and broke the Holy Cup, which means try to get him in disagreement with the congregation in Alexandria. Then they accuse him of killing a monk named Arseni. So in that case, they turn all the monks against him. And finally, they accuse him of committing adultery with a woman to try to disfigure his personal character in front of everyone. So 4 serious accusations were meant to destroy his relationship with the Roman government with the Christian congregation, with the monks in Alexandria, and with the average Christian people. So let's see how they respond to this accusation. First of all, it was clear that he did not prohibit the wheat exportation to Rome, and the wheat exportation was going on at the normal pace. The church that accused him of destroying it was completely intact, unharmed, and all the holy vessels were there. Arsenius the monk actually came to the council himself as a live monk. I said, no, I am not dead. They tried to get me with them in this trap to attack Pope Athanasius, but I regret it and I am alive. Pope Athanasius never hurt me. And the woman who accused him of committing adultery was here because she didn't see him at all. So his disciple, Timothy, came in front of everyone and pretend that he is Pope Athanasius. And the one said, yes, yes, you are the one who commit adultery with me. And it was obviously a lie to everyone because they know that this is not Pope Athanasius, but his disciple, Timothy. So Timothy saved his father, Pope Athanasius, proved to everyone that he's innocent, and proved the one to be lying. So four serious accusations, all of them went wrong, but just meant to destroy his relationship with the government, with the people, and with the monk. So now let's talk a little bit about Arius and why Arius was successful in spreading his heresy. Arius as a character was very attractive. He was a handsome young man, so a lot of girls and women followed him. He also was very eloquent and articulate. He used to spread his teaching through poems and song called Talia. So he write his idea in a song and spread it to the people. So people go in the street singing his song, repeating his teaching without realizing the serious mistake in his song. He was very connected to the emperor's sister, and through this connection, he convinced the emperor to distance Saint Athanasius from his church in Alexandria 5 times. Unfortunately, also some of the bishops, like the Bishop of Antioch and Bishop of Rome, believed Arius and believed his heresy and sided with him against Pope Athanasius. And some emperor also supported him and tried to get next to him. Finally, after a long conflict with Athanasius, he died a very terrible death in a public restroom in Turkey. That was around 336 years. So the story of Arius' death actually is well known, that the Emperor Constantine, after being fooled by his sister and a lot of ministers and leaders, he was convinced that Arius is right, and the political difference between him and Athanasius actually is toward Arius. So he ordered Arius to go back, not to Alexandria, but to Constantinople in Turkey to practice priesthood one more time. So he ordered Arius to go back as a priest to Constantinople, Turkey. At the same time, the bishop of Constantinople was a very righteous man, sided with Athanasius. He spent the whole night crying to Christ and saying, please God, don't let this happen in my life. If you allow Arius to come back and be a priest, take away my soul. But actually, God has a different plan in mind. In the way to the church, Arius felt very severe pain in his stomach, so he went to one of the public restrooms, and there he died in the toilet. And the people, when they felt he is late more than normal, they went in the restroom, checking him. His bowel was completely out, and he was dead on the toilet seat. Right away, the news spread to the emperor, and he felt that he was wrong, and he regretted that he ordered Arius to come back. Right away, he instituted Pope Athanasius back to Alexandria and apologized to him. This is a picture just explain to us the big difference between Arius and Pope Athanasius and how Arius died in a public restroom. It was a terrible death. So in the last 5 years of Pope Athanasius, after he came back to his church in Alexandria, he wasn't lazy or inactive. In the contrary, he was very active figure in preaching Christianity. He actually was honored by the emperor. He authored many books, including The Incarnation of the World, one of the most famous books that we count on till today for understanding the divinity and the incarnation of Jesus Christ. He renovated the burned churches that were there during the dispute between Arius' follower and the Orthodox people in Alexandria. And he confronted the Bishop of Syria for a new heresy. So he was very active all his life till the last day of his life. Pope Athanasius was one of the greatest pope that we ever have in the Coptic Church. If we want to look at his title, there are many titles given to Pope Athanasius. First, the Apostolic, the 13th disciple, considering Jesus have 12, so he'll be number 13. The Great, the Defender of the Faith, the Champion of the Faith, the Orthodox, and the Confessor. He was ordained Pope at a very young age, at 28. So what his strengths? What make him that strong against Arius and against heresy? If we learn about Saint Athanasius' strength point, it's good for us too, that we understand his strengths and try to acquire the same trait in our personality. First of all, he was a good deacon who constantly recited the church hymns. And the church hymns basically mean the church dogma, because the church hymns and the liturgy is just a small form of the Coptic dogma in a tune. So we sing actually our own dogma in the church, in the hymns, in the liturgy. So he realized right away that the Arius is completely against the normal dogma that he received as a deacon, and that helped him later on to straighten and correct the faith of Arius. He lived as a monk with Saint Anthony for a couple of years. That helped him to be ascetic, to be strength, to be brave, never been afraid. Even he confronted the Emperor Constantine one time at his own palace, and he was not afraid of him. So those who live the life of a monk usually have the bravery and courage more than the average people. Another strength point in his character that he copied St. John's Gospel many times and memorized it and used to refute Arius heresy. I'm going to show some example of the verses that he used. They all been referenced in the Gospel of St. John. That tell us how important it is to read the Gospel and to read the Bible every day and to memorize its verses that help us to understand our true Coptic faith and spread it and stop the rise up of new heresies. Another strength point that he was a loyal disciple to his father, Pope Alexander. Pope Alexander told him, never accept Arius in the church. And he was completely obedient to his father's command. He was loyal to him. No matter how much was the pressure against him to accept Arius, he refused. On the other hand, he lived a very strong and spiritual and humble and ascetic life. So he was very strong from the inside. And that helped him to oppose the attack and the pressure that come against him from the outside. If you are strong from the inside, know your faith, live up to your values, live up to your traditional Coptic Church values, you will really can be able to strengthen against all the attack and heresies from the outside. And finally, he has a deep knowledge of the Bible cover to cover. If we want to look at some of his quotes, one essence was the father, Homoousios, very famous. The word against you, and he said, and I'm against the world. Excuse me. It was said about him one time that if it was not for Athanasius, the entire world would have followed Arius. So at one point, almost everyone followed Athanasius, including the emperor, the minister, some of the bishop, a lot of the congregation. So it wasn't for Arius, I'm sorry, if it wasn't for Athanasius, a lot of people were for Arius and his heresy. Now let's look at some of his quote. God became man so that man might become a God. Jesus that I know as my Redeemer cannot be less than God. Jesus that I know as my Redeemer cannot be less than God. For no part of creation is left void of him, void of Christ. He has filled all things everywhere, which means he's God, because God is present everywhere. Christians, and instead of arming yourself with sword, extend their hand in prayers. And instead try to go up in arms and carry a weapon and carry sword. No, lift up your hand in prayer. This is much stronger than carrying sword. Till today, actually, we still follow this command from Pope Athanasius. So now let's look closely at Arius heresy. So what was Arius heresy? Basically, simple statement. The divinity of the Son is less than the divinity of the Father. That's what it is. The Son is God with his divinity, but his divinity is not equal to the divinity of the Father. And he built his own theory based in one verse saying, my Father is greater than I, which later on I'm going to explain why Jesus said it and what exactly he meant by it. But how to refute Arius heresy? This all from the books of Athanasius that he used in the council to defend the faith against Arius. And as you can see, they all going to come from the Gospel of St. John. I and my Father are one. John 10:30. I and my Father are one. Very simple, easy to remember. I and my Father are one. John 10:30. He who has seen me has seen the Father. John 14:9. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me. John 14:11. All are mine are yours and all yours are mine. He says this to the Father. All mine are yours and all yours are mine. John 17:10. For the Father judged no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son. Father judged no one. The one who's going to judge everyone in the world is the Son. Has committed all judgment to the Son. John 5:22. All things were made through him, through Christ. And without him, without Christ, nothing was made that was made. John 1:3. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. Whatever the Father does, the Son also does in like manner. The same way. John 5:19. All should honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father. John 5:23. The Son is equal to the Father, for as the Father has life in himself, so has granted Son to have life in himself, which means he has the inner life. All of us as human being granted life, but the Son has the life in himself. He is alive from the inside, the same as the Father. Therefore, the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. So that's how the Jews understood the relationship between Jesus and the Father. He made himself equal with God, equal with the Father. That's why they went after him and they tried to stone him. And that's mentioned in John 5:18. So let's look back at this verse that Arius hold on and tried to build the whole theory. It's called, my Father is greater than I. So exactly what does he mean? That he means the Son emptied himself of the glory when he was incarnated and became man in our nature. So he accepted slapping, smithing, flying, crucifixion. So basically in that condition, when he was being on the cross, when being tortured by the soldier, when he being smitten on, flogging, and under crucifixion, his glory is not equal to the Father. He emptied himself of the glory willingly. He did that by his own will. However, he said this verse before he's arrested in Gethsemane to the disciples to encourage them. He said, listen, you have witnessed my glory or part of my glory in the transfiguration. I'm going to give up this glory. I'm going to be less than glory than my Father in time of crucifixion. After the crucifixion, my resurrection, I'm going to get my glory back again, and you can see me going up to heaven, sitting at the right hand of the Father. So basically, he said this about a certain period of time while he was going to be suffering torture, smithing for our salvation on the cross. That's it. That's it. But Arius make it a big story and try to spread it as a heresy. The last thing we're going to talk about this lecture is about some of the famous monk at this time. Of course, we're going to have a project about the famous monk. I'm just going to mention their name here. Father Anthony the Great was in this period, followed by Father Macarius the Great, Father Pachomius of the Koinonia or the Fellowship. The picture of Saint Anthony, Saint Macarius the Great, and Father Pachomius of the Koinonia. These are the topics that we cover in this lecture: prominent Coptic Pope, Arius heresy and its refutation, and we learn about the famous monk. I'll leave you with some review quiz. Who is the seal of the martyr? Who saw Jesus in a dream with torn garment? What are the accusations they brought against Saint Athanasius? How many times was Saint Athanasius forced into exile? What are Saint Athanasius' strength points? And list some of the verses that can refute Arius heresy. I like to review with two verses that help us to understand the true Coptic faith and defend Arius heresy. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. 2 Timothy 4:7. Be faithful unto this. I will give you the crown of life. Revelation 2:10. Thank you so much for your attendance. I'll see you next week. Another lecture in the Coptic Church history. And glory be to God forever and ever. Amen.